Welcome back. Following our documentary in October, Warehouse, The Life and Death of Tristan Murphy, and our trip to Tallahassee last month with Tristan's mother, we wanted to examine whether the reforms everyone agrees are needed are actually going to be made by the legislature. And with only 3 weeks left in the session, time is running out. One legislator who has been fighting for change is Republican State Representative Patt Maney. A former judge and Army general, he has been trying to reform the Baker Act, the law that can be used by police or family members to provide emergency mental health treatment and detention for up to 72 hours for individuals who are at risk of serious bodily injury to themselves or others. Representative Maney, thank you for joining us. Give us an overview. I know that we're taping this on Thursday, and there was a committee vote this morning in which the bill to reform the Baker Act has now cleared its third committee, as I understand, unanimously. Give us a sense for what happened today and where things go from here.
In the Florida House, the bill to modernize the Baker Act and the Marchman Act was assigned 3 committees. We completed 2 of them earlier. This morning we had our third and final committee meeting. It passed 16-0, so that means every single committee we've gone through has been unanimous, and we're now ready for floor action. So this is the farthest I've ever gotten this bill. And I think before anybody before me has been able to get the bill. So I'm very excited, very optimistic that with the Speaker's support, we'll get this bill heard before the full House, and my sense is it will pass.
Now, it's interesting. I couldn't help but notice that when you started talking about it, I referred to it as reform and you referred to it as modernization. I think that there's a little bit of wordplay there because I think some of your colleagues don't like the word reform, and so modernizing it, I think, the semantics of it has helped. But let's move beyond the semantics. Give us a sense for what are the key aspects of this bill that are important, that you think are necessary, and that you're hoping will pass not just in the House but in the Senate and be signed by the governor as well.
Jim, first off, the Baker Act is over 50 years old and the Marchman Act is over 30 years old. So there's been a lot of scientific research, a lot of new medicines. There's just a lot that's changed. Our society's changed in 50 years or even 30 years. So the point of the bill is to address those changes, capture the good things from those changes and the strengths that we get from them, and to address the weaknesses that we have in our society. So the bill is designed to protect liberty, to get better outcomes for patients, to reinforce law enforcement, public safety, help our families, because when somebody is suffering from either mental illness or substance use disorder or both, they affect everybody around them. And so this bill is designed to meet those needs. It has a lot of mechanical kind of systemic changes, which may not interest your audience at all, but it's going to make the system much easier. It's hard. It's emotionally hard for families to go down to the courthouse and try to have a loved one involuntarily picked up for a mental health or substance use examination. And these changes have been designed to make that an easier process as far as the emotional trauma they have to go through to make it happen.
Now, let me just jump in here for a second, Representative, and I think those are the positive aspects, also trying to work a little bit more so that beyond the 72 hours that a person may be held, that there's some planning for what happens next. I think that's part of what you're hoping to achieve, but also the issue of, I want you to address that, but also I know one of the criticisms has been, and one of the things that you had fought for in previous years, was to expand the scope of the Baker Act so that more people, so that you didn't necessarily have to be of imminent bodily injury to yourself, that more people could basically receive the help that they need. But I know that there's a push and pull between civil libertarians who are concerned that this could be abused in a way of locking people up, particularly the homeless, versus, the greater needs of society and the needs to get people help and assistance. That's not in this bill. Are you disappointed that that broader scope is not in this year's bill?
Well, first off, I think those fears are misplaced. I think basically we have a known population, a relatively well-defined population of people who have mental health and substance use disorder problems. But we see them in the system in multiple places. We see them in the mental health system. We see them in the jails. We see them in the prisons. And these people often rotate through those agencies, plus at times the providers. And so I'm not concerned that the system will be overloaded. It is true that this year there was not the appetite to redefine the criteria. But let me tell you a piece of good news. The legislature, at least in the House, with leadership support, appropriated $50 million additional dollars so that we can better treat people, provide that planning, provide the warm handoff, those sorts of things that we can use to keep the patients, once they get out of the hospital, from falling through the crack and then coming back into the system involuntarily again. So as far as looking at the criteria, I think we'll do that next year. This is a very complex problem. It impacts so many other things, like for folks who are aged and may have dementia or Alzheimer's. That's something we're going to have to look at. We're going to have to look at the situation of children in school and being subject to Baker Act and their transportation. I can't imagine anything much more traumatic for a child, a relatively small child perhaps, being handcuffed and walked out of school and put in the back seat of a law enforcement car.
And so let me just jump in here, because we only got a couple minutes left, and obviously you want to avoid that, and that's where some of these reforms will come in. You know, you talk about the additional $50 million. You talk about the positive aspects of the reform. I know there are a couple of other bills that are also working their way through dealing with mental health. You know, from a big picture standpoint, you've been trying to fight and argue about this since you joined the legislature a few years back. You dealt with this when you were a judge in the Panhandle. Are you more optimistic today than you were a few years ago? And why do you think the legislature is finally getting that appetite to tackle such a difficult issue, and one that often stirs controversy?
I'm more optimistic because I've seen positive movement and I've seen interest. The fact that we haven't had a single legislator ask a negative question or vote against the bill so far shows me that the education of the legislature, educating them to the problems, is been a big part of our success, just like leadership. I mean, leadership matters in everything we do. Every organization, corporate or nonprofit or government, leadership matters. And we now have leadership that understands the challenge and is willing to take it on. They're not afraid of a difficult problem. This bill is 122 pages long. The bill analysis was 33 pages long. But it also deals with things like people who are incompetent to proceed in a criminal case. So we're addressing both the civil aspect and the criminal aspect and trying to make sustainable, substantive improvements for the people of the state of Florida.
Well, let me jump in here again. You talk about leadership, and that's always been one of the difficult things is when you have a new speaker every 2 years, one speaker's priorities may not carry over to the next speaker's priorities. But in my conversations with the new incoming speaker, who will be Danny Perez from down here, and I believe you've had discussions with him, this is a subject that he's willing to continue to build on with you. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. I spoke with him literally not more than 30 minutes ago. and gave him a report, and he supports it. Speaker Renner has certainly supported it.
Well,
so I think the gentleman who's going to follow Speaker Perez will support it. He's very invested. Both of those men have been supportive of my efforts so far.
Representative Maney, I gotta sort of bring it in here. I'm happy that things are moving in the House. I think things are also be moving in the Senate, and we'll stay on top of that. And anything we can do to help it push it along, let us know.
I certainly will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Maney. All right. Thank you very much.
Bye.
We'll be right back after the break.